This is the Real Footy podcast. Coming up, Jack Crisp breaks Jim Stein's record, and then Collingwood Hearts failing to get Collingwood over the line against the Cats in an MCG thriller. Essendon hang on against the media-shy Kangaroos. The Lions triumph in the most hyped Q clash so far, and Bailey Smith needles the Dogs. All that and more right after this.
Kept in by Jeffrey, which is an interesting tactic, because that could happen any time. Charlie Cameron desperately seeking, is this it? Mr. DJ, are you ready?
Stayed set, game on the line.
Listen to the crowd, they'll tell you whether he kicks it or not.
245th straight game. Crisp to win it from 50. Set sail, Jack Crisp misses.
Hello and welcome. My name is Michael Gleeson, and joining me today are Jake Noel and Caroline Wilson. Welcome to you both.
Hello, Michael. Hello, Jake.
Caro, Glees, good to be here after an interesting round.
An interesting round that had two sort of fizzes to start broadcasting fizzes to start the round, and then peaked with 82,000 at the MCG for a game that wasn't on free TV.
No, I know. I mean, it was a better contest, as it turned out, than the election, Jake, which was pretty one-sided pretty early.
Well, I reckon
you couldn't call the winner of Collingwood Geelong until the last quarter, very late in the last quarter.
No, till after the
siren.
final siren.
I was at the game, and you couldn't actually get phone coverage, any internet coverage on your phone in the quarter and half-time and three-quarter time breaks, which you normally can at the MCG, and I think it was people just checking collection results.
It was an extraordinary game, and let's face it, it was a pretty doer sort of round of footy, a lot of one-sided games. Essendon North wasn't one-sided. North really fought the good fight, but
take slight exception on Essendon North. I found myself quite engaged in that game, and with a genuine doubt about what would happen, because North had all that momentum, and Zach Merritt, like Patrick Dangerfield, 2 nights later, just Zach Merritt. I mean, Dangerfield's last quarter was extraordinary, but it was a quarter. This was a game and a quarter. And Zach Merritt, you sort of the comparisons that Brad Scott made with Nathan Buckley are he's not as good a player, but he is, in terms of professionalism and doing everything he can and standing out like a
beacon.
It's a two-man assault on their regeneration or climb back to the top four, isn't it? Scott and the captain. I mean, he has very much aligned himself. The stuff they did together in the off-season.
Went to America together.
Yep, understanding that, Merritt has his weaknesses and playing to his strengths. I mean, if Essendon becomes successful again, they're the two who are going to lead them out of the wilderness.
Well, they are. I mean, firstly, I'll take some exception. I was covering that game, and at halftime, I would have gouged my eyes out rather than continue to watch the rest of that game. The second quarter was absolutely hideous football.
It was Channel 7's
and it was
lowest
saved,
rating Thursday night of the year.
It was saved in the second half by North's rally and what became a really tight and close game. But also, I tell you what,
controversies a little bit.
Well, the Harrison Jones ankle, that was just awful. And I remember on Anzac Day, just on three-quarter time, he hurt his right ankle, and I think this was the right ankle again, wasn't it? And anyway, it was awful, and so they get the win, but gee, it came at a pretty big cost. Ridley hamstring again, and
in a media sense, it was quite interesting. I wasn't at the game; I was watching it, obviously, and I was watching Channel 7's coverage of it when Brian Taylor and Luke Hodge sort of took on Kane Corns when he was critical a couple of times of North Melbourne. I think Brian said nobody's perfect, Kane. I mean, it was quite interesting that they've it's getting combative even in the commentary box, which is
well, it was even last week with Dale Thomas and Luke Hodge and Kane Corns on one of the shows. I lost track of which one it was, but Dale Thomas went after Kane Corns and challenged him about the facts with some of those Sheasel comments that Corns had made. And obviously the backdrop to this game, this game, the backdrop to this obviously is that North put this ban on talking with Kane Corns because of what they say was the final straw with the Sheasy ball. I thought it was a bit ill-advised by North. I didn't think it was, I think Corns' comments were probably ill-advised too, but I don't think I would have gone down the path of black banning someone.
Well, we've all been banned in the past, haven't we, by footy clubs
or individuals.
And Essendon during the drug scandal were putting out press releases about me day in, day out, but that was a far more serious
More heat in that
issue, a lot more heat in that, and I think that I just think they couldn't see the wood for the trees when that was going on. But Dennis Pagan famously banned us all at various times, and you didn't know you're alive unless you'd been banned by the North Melbourne coach.
I was briefly at the Herald Sun after the merger of the Herald, and I remember a celebrated incident where they wouldn't give interviews to anyone it was Carlton and North. And Chris de Kretzer was the sports editor. And he said, right, we're blacking out the sponsor's logo in the photos.
Oh, yeah.
And that you don't reckon people jumped when that happened? That was like, you could think of that now, it would blow up into World War III. It would be all over the media.
Well, I think it did at the time.
It was just...
No, it was pretty big at the time.
There is a lot of anger going around at the moment. I mean, I wrote in my column on Saturday about the coaches and how angry they are at the moment and how disappointed they are at the AFL, largely soft cap, but other stuff too. And, a senior coach actually said to me last week, we might just stop talking to the media during the halftime breaks and after the game and before the game and
work to rule.
And I was saying, well, why are you taking it out on the media?
Yeah.
But, I mean, there is a lot of anger, and North sort of, in a way, look, it put them on the front page, quite literally. Herald Sun, was leading their website for a while on the day that they did it, the day that...
Better that than talk about Dutton at the time, I suppose.
Todd Viney's press conference. Was it a bit of a publicity stunt, take a stand, rally the troops?
Well, no, rally the troops, yes. What I think it was, and you see this with certain coaches, Luke Beveridge notably, where you see something that looks from outside, well, this is a bit irrational. Is this really going to help you? But
he's banned Kane as well.
Yeah.
And me and a few others.
Yeah, but the intended target is not the media. The intended target is not the public. The intended target is the players and the people inside the club to say, I will take on all comers for you. And that is what sort of... We're sticking up for our people was the message coming out of it, even if it was irrational. I didn't agree with it. I think they'd be better to get Kane, bring Kane Corns in for a coffee and just have a chat to him. And, people find it a lot harder to take shots at people when they're standing in front of them. That's just human nature.
I think there's some merit in what you say, other than the fact that Alistair wasn't part of the decision. He made that very clear in
North
the
are
post.
at pains to tell us that, aren't they?
Yeah,
they
it was the executive. It was Mick Tormey, Jem Watt and Todd Viney that made the decision, and Clarkson himself said afterwards in the press conference, I didn't tell the players because I didn't make the decision. It wasn't me.
It was made on behalf of him to a large degree.
Yes, it was. No, but I'm just saying if you're doing it as a signal, we've got your back to the players. I don't know if that was necessarily the logic in this instance.
But they said that it was very pointed what they said. They said our people. Our people doesn't just mean the players; it means Clarkson.
Yeah.
And Jake, it was a massive week for Clarkson because the heavily negotiated return to Hawthorn on Sunday, which was that was really concentrating the mind of the Clarkson camp early in the week, Monday, Tuesday. He was heavily emotional about that too. He might have gone to the game, he might have worn the scarf, but he wasn't at the function. He did the stuff on the ground, but he wasn't in the rooms. So it was great that he did it, but I think he was pretty emotional anyway. There's still so much residual anger from him towards his old club and towards the AFL. So I think, as you suggested to me off air, Michael, I think that North were probably worried what might happen.
Well, I think they thought it might have triggered him a bit. It might have triggered him a bit, seeing Kane Corns and just, he's in a heightened state and, with all of those things going on and then you see this guy that's aggravated you and does it distract and set you off as you're trying to concentrate on the game? And I think that was a factor in it.
I just think they built it into more than it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to make a whole pot about Kane Corns. I think some of his comments were pretty... I think the Sheasel thing was just an overreach in calling it Sheezy ball, but I think saying the guy should, get forward a bit more and that is legitimate sort of commentary. A bit weird about a halfback flanker not having enough scoring assists, but
it's theatre, isn't it? And Bailey Smith continued the theatre after the game. going back to the Geelong-Collingwood game, when he said you won't get that at Ballarat. Bont bit back, which was good.
Yeah.
I thought that was... I mean, a couple of people said Bont took the bait, and a couple of people have said, they're going to have to put a lid on Bailey Smith. But
but Bailey Smith.
I think so too.
Bailey Smith was responding to a question, and this is what often gets missed in these situations. Like, I go back to Jacinta Allen with the Bolter situation. Jacinta Allen was asked a question. This gets completely lost. Like, Damien Hardwick's talking about this, like she came out deliberately to say it.
Oh, Hardwick was stupid talking about that.
Yeah, well, that was not
Hardwick having a go at the Premier talking about a law and order matter. Hang on.
Well, he managed to get Jeff Kennett defending a Labor Premier, so that's a fair effort, Dimmer.
He's a master deflector, isn't he? He did the same on Sunday night, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But I thought the theatre was great. I still think Bailey Smith was making a deliberate jibe. I don't think the question from Cam Mooney was necessarily...
No, he brought the Dogs into it from nowhere. He gave them a drive-by.
It sort of came from nowhere, Jake, I think.
Having said that, he was absolutely right.
What a miserable day that was.
Oh.
I mean, I'm sorry. I know it's tough. I know they're rebuilding Mars. I know they've got a deal.
Don't play there while they're rebuilding it.
That's what I reckon.
And I don't know the logistics from a filming point of view, but why not put the cameras on the construction site and have them pointing it back across to where there are actual crowds, so that you're not just looking at Bob the Builder and his digger over on the far side. It was horrendous. It looked like a local footy match. And then you watch, and the Bulldogs deserve, the main point of that is that they played a great game of footy and deserve to be playing that in front of a big crowd on, primetime TV. They're a really good team to watch.
And isn't it a surprise there wasn't a politician like in the building site with high-vis vest on, given the timing? So that was my only surprise.
Look, everyone behaved well. No one complained from either side. Port Adelaide put a good face on. They've won there the last two times they've taken on the Bulldogs. They actually haven't lost in Ballarat, but they were terrible, terrible. So, but no excuses. Nobody complained. So everyone behaved well, but I think it was one poor fixture in a round of pretty putrid fixturing.
Right. We will try and get vaguely back to the run sheet and talk about the Port and the Bulldogs in the next segment.
And another thing about the fixture.
We'll get back to the first game off the top that we're going to talk about, which is the Collingwood-Geelong game, which was a cracking game of footy. That coming down to the Jack Crisp, the player that had so much about him, having the final kick in the final.
Did he take it a bit quickly,
siren.
Jake?
Yeah, what's funny, on the way in today, I was listening to Nathan Buckley talk about it. And Nathan Buckley was sitting there with a friend, and he said he was in the Collingwood past player. He was in this Collingwood nest, and he admitted a bit of emotion about watching Jack Crisp, Jack Crisp had sent him a text thanking him on Sunday for the part he played in his career. And Nathan saying, he felt, if he just make it like a running shot and run out. So Nathan couldn't, the coach in Nathan was projecting onto what Chris would do in that moment. And he sort of did it, but he looked to me like his run up, you could see on the run up, I think he's going to fluff this. When he took the kick, I thought, he'll kick this.
No.
He'll kick this. He's got an amazing leg.
On two things on that. One, I thought once he was running in, I thought, no, he's not going to kick this because he stuttered.
But that's what I thought when he was running in. Yeah.
And I also think that he tends to generally run on a slight arc to the left because he's a left footer. And I think he was, as it is after the siren, you're told straight line or it's play on. I think he was worried about straying off the line and kept himself on that straight line. But I mean, it was great theatre.
Very small point. When he took the shot and he had the mark, I thought back to the grand final of 2023.
Yeah.
He kicked one on halftime siren from almost the same distance at the other end, at the punt road end, off not as big a step. And he just came back. He took a big run up, though. And he just came in and he just kicked it absolutely dead straight, right through the middle. Same distance. Yeah. Sunny day. And
fatigue. One's at the end of the game.
One's to win the game. One's to give them a better lead or a lead at heart. Lead, I think it was.
Well, I mean, how did Geelong squander what was, more than 2-goal lead? Or your 14,
17 points, I think.
17 points. And
points.
Well, Collingwood had scored. It was one of those games, though, Cara, where it went back and forth. And Collingwood actually controlled probably, 2/3 of the game. And Geelong were more efficient, as you wrote.
But that final 3 or 4 minutes. Well, so Collingwood lost it by not putting them away when they were 20 points up. And they had those missed shots at goal invariably at those moments, it doesn't feel consequential because you a few goals up anyway. But they could have and should have got out to that 5-goal lead, which probably safeguards it. And then Dangerfield into prior to Dangerfield in the last quarter, Geelong changed the way they played a bit. And they closed up on Nick Dacos a bit. They flooded back. They played Collingwood on the rebound. They denied them the corridor. Collingwood couldn't get the ball. They were just bombing it forward, and there was intercept marks. They weren't taking the marks up forward. So that's where it started. And then Dangerfield did it.
Sorry, Michael, but was it you who wrote today about Jordan De Goey?
Yep.
Yeah, so you talked about Dangerfield versus De Goey. That was a really good column. But explain what you saw from De Goey.
Well, De Goey just doesn't look fit. He had an interrupted pre-season. He looked sore. He had no, like, if you look at Dangerfield, they've got similar physical traits. So you think, well, one has had a full pre-season and is fit and is playing as well as he ever has in this changed role as a forward primarily, and De Goey just couldn't have any impact the way we know he can have an impact, and he looks like he's carrying this ankle Achilles thing that I don't think he'll play in Perth this week, and I don't know whether a bit of a break will serve him well, but he's just, to me, he doesn't just
accentuated pre-season.
Yeah, I think that he's just looks a bit underdone and sore, and he got no it's a trend with De Goey that he's just never plays a full season. He's always had some sort of injury, or always had suspensions. But
has he been? Probably the point I'd make about it, and written about him in the past quite a bit. In that period post the contract, just has he? Dangerfield is playing at the age of 35 at a level that if Jordan De Goey looked after himself as well as had every bit of rigour that, now maybe his body's not as sound, but to get your body right, you have to do everything right. And what we're seeing is these players like Steele Sidebottom, Pendlebury, Dangerfield, various others around the comp, Jack Gunston now. We're seeing it's been the year of the super veteran to a degree.
So what do you do with Dangerfield now, Jake? I mean, how do you play him out for the rest of the year?
You're going to have to rest him at some point. So there's going to be a 5 day. I don't know if they've got a 5-day break, Geelong, but if you get a consecutive 6-day breaks at some point, or you have a taxing road trip, you're going to have to rest him because Geelong have to.
Well, they had the 5-day break against Carlton, didn't they? And we saw what happened.
That's right.
One had 9 and one had 5.
5-day breaks. I mean, really, 5-day breaks are lethal. I mean, I think I'll make an early call here. I'll be selecting Fremantle to beat Collingwood. I think Collingwood...
As bad as Fremantle were.
As bad as Fremantle were. Well, Fremantle beat Adelaide. Fremantle, we know they're going to spike up and down. This is their pattern this year.
They'll cop heat all week.
They'll cop heat all week in Perth. They'll be on their home ground. Collingwood are going to have to rest. Their players are not going to play. So I don't know whether Pendlebury will go. They rested 3 emergencies. So those players, at least 2 of them are playing.
And Howe
is rested. So
Maynard
at least...
to be surprised to play.
He might play. He might not. But...
So going back to Geelong Collingwood, what did Craig McRae mean when he said sometimes you win when you lose and
behave like a winner?
You lose when
it's
you
all
win.
that behave. You can lose but behave like a winner. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, he does. I get the logic of it. But a couple of contentious decisions. What did you think of the rundown tackle?
The
Bobby Hill.
Yeah.
Well, I at the time, my first instinct was, he's got him low, and then when I watched it, I was like, well, it was holding the ball before it was low. So it was the wrong decision. But you know what? I mean, like...
It didn't decide the game.
The game was on Collingwood. The game was on Collingwood's boot. And they... Slide bottom missed from, 20 metres out straight in front. We focus so much, because there's so many replays now, we focus on these umpiring decisions. But most things are decided by players making mistakes and even the odd coaching error. I think
the focus on that one, regardless of whether you think what effect it had. It was because it was so dramatic. There's this theatre, like it was
the whole ground could
running
see
down.
Run down,
the cheetah running down the gazelle is just sort of, everyone could see it about to happen except for Manor, and he just, I thought it was as I said, I thought it was a wrong decision, but I thought the umpire at the score review was right. I mean, you couldn't overrule that.
I'm probably a little bit more on the score review. Gerard Whateley was talking about this, saying there was a goal cam that sort of showed that it missed Blitzar's hand. And then they've used all these other camera angles. Now, I don't know. This is still an area that it's become big. Talk about the theatre of the game. It's a massive theatre in the game, the goal review. But as a process, the idea that you defer to the umpire's call is completely correct.
Yeah.
So it didn't look like he touched it, but the process is correct.
Have we said enough about Essendon North? Could we move on to the Q clash now?
We can move on to the Q
I
clash.
love the Q clash. I found it, Sunday night is a difficult time for many people, but it was perfect for Queensland. Gabba's sold out again. Two sides that completely hate each other. Even silly Dane Zorko saying at halftime. Did you see his interview? And he said, yeah, I tried to suck him in, but it didn't work. Good credit to them or something like that.
Yeah.
Charlie Cameron kicking those two goals within 2 minutes, country roads. I mean, must be a bit off-putting.
Yeah, I
when
thought
you're
it
playing,
was
to have
tremendously poor for Gold Coast. That was a terrible result for them. When the margin at the end didn't reflect the game. They were belted.
They got 3
quarter
cheapies
time.
at the end,
they got
didn't
some cheapies, and it was all set up. This was, they beat Sydney, but this was one of their big first challenges, and they failed.
Well, they've only lost to Richmond and the Premier.
Only losing to Richmond. Yeah.
Well, they've lost to the bottom one, the bottom team and the top team.
Yeah.
And
West Coast are the bottom team.
Well, West
last year's.
No, last year's wouldn't spoon it though.
Yeah.
And they played like it again on Sunday.
I thought it was funny that against the team that plays at Carrara, Brisbane was wearing the Bears jumper. That looks like the poo emoji, I must say.
My husband said to me, "Why are they?" I said, "They're not wearing the Bears jumper." He said, "They are," and then of course I read that they were, so he was right.
I'm always surprised how many people in footy that I know who've been around still call the Lions the Bears. They say, they beat the Bears, and they just call them the Bears. You get old school people who are old coaches or whatever, they go, the Bears. Well, we beat the Bears. Yeah, they still call them the Bears.
Speaking of Gold Coast, and what was it, the Ashcroft medal, Marcus's boys.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Just,
Little Lord Fauntleroy's. Yeah.
And Andrew Bassett will just be ripping that out his hair again when watching that. I mean, Will Ashcroft... He is a beautiful footballer, and was probably not probably ill-advised of the Gold Coast people to sledge him, the players to sledge him in that pre-season practice game about he shouldn't have won the Norm Smith because he played like a Norm Smith medalist. Charlie Cameron finding some form again. Yeah,
and completely obliterating, Dunkley obliterating Matt Rowell. That just seemed to have a profound effect. No one else could get a clearance, and in that first period. Gold Coast just kept bombing it. They were getting these terrible entries. They've no ability to hold the ball forward. They were just kicking long. Ben King took about a quarter and a half to even touch the footy. Ted Walter couldn't bring the ball down.
Noah Anderson had a poor game by his standards. I think I'm not too concerned about the Gold Coast. I think this was one Brisbane would have set themselves for. Yeah. They're still smarting from Collingwood. And they needed a big scalp. They were obviously brilliant last week.
Which was also off a 5-day break when they played Collingwood. They came back from Adelaide off a 5-day break. So the 5-day breaks, I think, are going to be they're an emerging issue of how teams manage them and how they you'll look back at the end of the year and go, the dropped games, teams are dropping games, I think, are dropping and will be dropping games from the 5-day break.
There's also games where, as terrible as Fremantle were, we'll get to that, but there are games where a Perth team comes over and they just aren't there.
You can tell they haven't really.
Yeah, because they're travelling every second week and they're travelling a long way.
But just full stop on Gold Coast, Brisbane Gold Coast. This is footy in Queensland is completely rocketing. I mean, this is magic round, obviously a big weekend for NRL in Queensland as well, or just off the back of that. It is absolutely rocketing. And those two teams to be doing so well is just so good for footy.
Yeah, it is. And for those in Melbourne who didn't know why it was, and the rest of the country, why it was played at 7:30 on 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, which seemed weird. It's a public holiday it was a public holiday in Queensland on Monday, so that was the rationale.
It's a national game, Michael.
I know, but you may have plenty of people are sitting there thinking that they're about to watch 60 Minutes or something, and the footy's still on. All right, we'll take a break there and come back talking a little bit more about the Bulldogs and Port Crows win over Carlton and St Kilda and Freo.
We're online all the time. Just search Age Real Footy on Facebook or Twitter.
Calmness there. McNeil trying to keep a leer out of it. Vandermeer with another crumb. And the handball was good. English with a clever pick-up. Bontempelli around the body. He says, John Fraser, I'm still the number one man. I am still the legitimate...
Well, welcome back. We have discussed, Cara, the ill-advised idea of playing the Bulldogs in Ballarat at a half-eaten Mars Stadium. Only 4,800 people there.
Is that a pun?
Oh, it was a pun, just sliding it through. So Bailey Smith, I think, had it right, even if he did upset his former teammates. But Luke Beveridge, where does it stand right now with him and his contract, do you think? Will he be at the Bulldogs?
Well, it's looking more and more likely with every game, isn't it? I mean, there's a touch of the old Ken Hinkley and Port Adelaide, the team they beat on the weekend. You know, was it David Koch said, we're not discussing Hinkley's contract till August. This was a couple of years ago. They kept winning. Yeah. They finished up in the top four, but they sort of dropped away after they did re-sign him. And then did they go out in straight sets? I think they did in the finals. So that's a bit of a cautionary tale, but I think Kylie Watson-Wheeler was interviewed on the ABC over the weekend, and everyone keeps up. We're talking every week. We're talking all the time. I feel like he's getting closer to a deal myself.
Jake, if you go and sign him now, and then they go out, like they've lost 2 elimination finals, the last 2 final series, and they get to the finals and then they go out again, what would the noises be then?
Well, the bigger thing with Luke is that he's been there 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's actually this is his 11th season. But this year, he is getting absolutely the best out of that group. So right at the moment, if you base it on right now, but from what
they're
I gather,
sixth on the ladder, and they're only percentage out of the top 4.
Yeah, but they've had injuries. They haven't had Bontempelli till a couple of weeks ago, and they don't have Luke Darcy at the moment. So Sam Darcy. And by the way, Luke Darcy, a key player in this, as on the board, he was the person most responsible for Luke Beveridge's appointment in the originally, having insisted on Luke Beveridge being in the process for the coach search when it happened. That was Luke Darcy. And now, of course, I would say in the power structure at the 2 people who would have, you would say, who has the most influence on this? If Marcus Bontempelli wants Luke Beveridge to be coach,
we think he does.
We think that would be one, and he certainly batted for him in the last contract. That's 100% fact. And the other part is Luke Darcy and the Darcy family.
And then Sam Darcy.
Well, the Darcys.
Exactly.
The Darcys were, so Bontempelli and Darcy. I don't think it'd be exaggerating to say that Luke is on the board, but they would have more clout in this than Kylie Watson-Wheeler.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. That's fair.
He should have more say.
Yeah, but also having a potentially one of the best players in the league as happens to be your son, and there might be another Darcy or 2 coming.
And to that, Sam and Bont, I think, have only played about half a game of footy together this year. Yeah. So they've had only one of their 2 best players at any given time this season.
And the extraordinary distraction of Ugle Hagen, which is probably less of a distraction now he's out, but has been a distraction all year as well. Yeah. So no, they've had a great year, but I still say he deserves. And some other coaches have said to me, I would never let this happen. I would never go into a last year of a contract with this hanging over me. But I think he's brought it on himself a bit because he has been inconsistent in the past. Yeah, inconsistent as a coach, as a selector of players. Sorry, Jake, you're looking like you want to say something.
There's a point here. My understanding is Beveridge is very comfortable with this. Yep. So I think that some people are viewing this as, I think Beveridge has as much say in what happens as the Bulldogs. I think that there's I'm not going to say a mutual agreement, but I think both parties are very comfortable.
All right. We'll move on.
And he said he won't be coaching anywhere else next year.
Yep.
Which I find hard to believe, but there we are.
Well, we'll move on. We don't need to dwell on the coaching, but Carlton?
in an unrelated question.
They were terrible. They were terrible.
Again.
And Adelaide needed a win because Adelaide have been really disappointing the last few weeks. And they played the way we would expect them to play on their home ground in a must-win game. Yeah. But I thought Carlton would give a bit more.
Yeah, I think everyone did, and particularly after, you have a big win over Geelong, and then and that's coming off, 2 soft games, West Coast and North, but they won games that, they should win, and they did. Then you get 3 in a row, and you feel like, having played Geelong, beaten them, you're on your way, and you go and do that. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, I tipped Adelaide, so it was not a surprise that they lost, but it was a surprise they lost by that much and played that way. I think that's
Shouldn't be losing by 10
No,
goals when you're
no.
a finals contender.
It was a regression to the early season mean by Carlton.
Yeah.
It was after a big peak, a big spike against Geelong.
Yeah.
Because the previous wins, they beat North. Well, I'm not getting any hosannas for that. And who else? They fixed up West Coast. So the Geelong game was okay. Are they back? Are they going to be contend for the finals? And that game was a big step back. It was very disappointing. And Adelaide, I think, have been pretty consistent. I think Adelaide, have had Adelaide's poor games, like what they lost to Fremantle. They're not terrible performances, are they?
No, I mean, the Gold Coast loss at the time, you felt that, that was, I know, earlier in the season, but you felt, well, both these teams are going to be there and abouts and no big deal. But then Adelaide just kept losing after that. It was a real worry. So, and now they've got the showdown, haven't they, this weekend? And you would think they will go into that game hot favourites. And on form, they should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
just quickly, have a look at Jordan Dawson against Carlton.
yeah.
I'd like to see how many votes he's got in those last few games against them. He's a fantastic player.
He is. He's been a great
He's
pickup
sort of a
for
forgotten
them.
player when you talk about great recruits. Like, to pick up a player from, come from Sydney and just go, no,
They didn't give up. He's worth 2 first-round picks and they gave up one.
Yeah.
And not a very high one.
You pick up a captain of your club and, when is he their best player?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the subject of 10 goal defeats brings us to Friday night. It was a terrible game. It was always going to be a terrible game. At halftime, what was it, 4-1 or something?
That was unwatchable at halftime. Like,
we're talking about St Kilda
was
Fremantle.
good afterwards. Like, they at least played well. It wasn't on them. I'm being critical of Ross Lyon in boring or ugly games. This wasn't St Kilda's fault. This was just a terrible Fremantle team playing a really bad style of footy, and it was awful to watch. But this is just Fremantle.
Should this have been
speechless?
away from Perth? They're hopeless.
We
return
talked back on this on the week yesterday. Is this a fixturing fiasco to have that as the Friday night game?
Oh,
Gareth?
completely.
Do any Seven sources say that it's...
We also spoke about it on 3AW on Saturday, and I said this round was the biggest bone of contention between the broadcasters and the AFL when they were talking fixture last year, and that Seven were not happy.
Is it a minimum Friday night thing? Is that what's caused this?
No, well, a certain team gets... No, I don't think so. I just think that there were 5-day break issues and reasons why St Kilda Freo was on Friday night and not Collingwood Geelong, but it was wrong. It was poor fixturing. There was no excuse to have Thursday and Friday so poor, and to halt the momentum of a season as the fixturing did, in my view, when everything was just... I mean, Seven have had a great run. You've got to say they've had some pretty good Thursday, Friday night games, but this just halted the momentum completely.
And it was foreseeable. That's the annoying thing. No one at the start of the year would tell you that St Kilda Fremantle, when Fremantle's playing in Melbourne, is a good game to watch.
So Simon Garlick, the CEO, who may or may not be there next year, if he goes to the AFL, he denies that, but we don't necessarily believe that. Yep. He said that there is no way that Justin Longmuir wouldn't be coaching next year. I don't see how he can say that. I don't see how in any universe you can guarantee Justin Longmuir for next year now. For a start, he doesn't have a contract. So
he's got this employment rolling.
Yeah, so he doesn't have a contract. So there's no cost to them, I'm assuming.
No, I think there would be a cost.
3 or 6 month payout.
Yeah, it'd be
they're a wealthy club, no big deal. I mean, what is this costing them, these poor performances? I just can't see how they wouldn't.
Respect in the first instance.
Yeah, and again, you've got all these guys who aren't coaching, or people like Luke Beveridge out of contract, who I just don't see why Fremantle must be looking at Plan B at the moment.
Well, they've gone in hard in all of their recruiting and list. They've got all the other pieces in place saying, well, this team has got everything across the board to be a contending team. What's holding us back? And then it has to fold back on the coach. And what's the program? What are we doing with this group of players? We've brought them all in. We've compiled this list that should be able to contend, and we go away from the Nullarbor and we're just across the Nullarbor and we're roadkill. It's a different team. They'll come back and they'll play really well this week, and they'll all forget how bad they were against St Kilda, But, it's the problem with the fixturing is that Fremantle, if you're going to fix your Fremantle on a Friday or Thursday night, it's got to be in Perth. Because when they are in Melbourne, no one comes to see them.
Mm.
So you want to show
20,000
You want to show a game with
Marvel
a full
Stadium.
crowd.
Disappointing crowd. But just
The crowds were actually disappointing throughout the weekend. I mean, I was...
You expected more than 4,800 in Ballarat.
Well, I expected more at the Hawthorn-Richmond game, I've
it was
got
over
to say.
60.
62,000? Would you have thought for their
No, I thought that-
100th anniversary?
I thought that was pretty good.
On a beautiful Sunday
Yeah, but
afternoon?
Hawthorn
You're
aren't-
playing
Hawthorn
against the
aren't-
bottom three team.
You're playing against Richmond.
Yeah, but an MCG team who said, oh, no, I realise Richmond's crowds are way down this year, but I thought more people would turn up to that. Just saying.
Hawthorn are not Carlton or Collingwood. They're not.
I realise that. I still
So-
thought it was...
I
I was
thought it was pretty
surprised
good.
at the amount of empty seats given the day, given the weather. But getting back to St Kilda and Freo, what about St Kilda? So Ross Lyon shredded his players the week before, and then he shredded the AFL in a press conference on Tuesday. He was in fine form, in fine fettle. Was this a...
Oh, he got the response, and they played well. I mean, what more do you need to say? It was difficult to watch him rip through Garcia the week before, but it wasn't necessarily wrong. He had his reasons for doing it. But
He didn't drop him though. That's really notable. He didn't drop him, and he played. Garcia responded.
Mm.
So you pick your mark. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
you would know that he's the sort of player that likely can deal with that.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing now is they play Carlton, and it's all about Tom De Koning.
Yeah.
Which team will you be at next year, Tom? Now, I don't think this game will decide which team he's going to be at, but it's intriguing. What's your take on
It's
the
Friday
latest?
night again, isn't it? Another Friday night for the Saints.
But this will be
what
full.
what I think will happen is at the end of the game, if Carlton win, the interviewers will go to Tom De Koning. I'm just going to make a little prediction right now. Abby Holmes will be going over there to say, Tom, good game, So how did you feel about playing against St Kilda?
And I wonder what sort of sledging's going to go on during the game as well. Look, I don't think any of us think St Kilda are going to contend this year.
No, but Carlton thought they were going to. So that's why
Are
there's
you
so
writing
much
them
more
off?
riding. Oh, they're very close to it now. What's it, 3 and they lose this 3 and 6.
Yeah, they've had a poor start to the year.
No,
if they lose this.
No, they're not a contender. They
No.
can play at the level of one sporadically, but not consistently. Whereas, say, Adelaide, who cleaned them up, Adelaide's playing not many games where Adelaide fails to get to at least 6 out of 10. Their best is about 8 out of 10. Their best is not 9 out of 10. Let's say Brisbane's is a 9 out of 10. Adelaide aren't sinking below 6 very often, if at all.
Yeah, it's intriguing though. You say, are they a contending team? You look at the teams outside the 8 as they sit right now: Fremantle, St Kilda, Essendon, Port, Carlton, Sydney, Melbourne. There's teams in the 8 that aren't playing like they deserve to stay there. Like GWS, a pre-season favourite, and they've just been
really
in free fall.
disappointing. Yep.
Gold Coast are yet to. I think they will make the 8 because they've got 5 wins already.
Oh, yep.
Oh, and
But you look at those teams outside.
friendly.
There's Fremantle are probably the one that you go, well, are they the one that's going to disrupt and push in? But it's only on the home games. Like they've got 4 wins now from 8. They pick up another 7. That's not going to get them there if it's just on home games. They've got to be winning away. So
No, GWS
I'm not sure
have
if
had
any
that
of them get
huge
in.
block of games away from NG Stadium. Now they're back at home. I mean, I'm not making excuses for them because they should be winning in Canberra. They should be winning at the SCG, but no, they've been really disappointing.
All right, we'll take a break there. Come back with quick questions.
Get access to every episode as it drops. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Vaughan's imposing frame in the ruck. He'll get it at ground level. Try to find Langdon. They crunched into Gawn hard there.
Welcome back, straight into it. Jake, is Max Gawn the best ruckman in the game or still the best ruckman in the game?
Yes, even though Tom De Koning is rivaling him Tom De Koning's some of its his hit outs to advantage are very good, but I'd still give it to Gawn in terms of his ability to impact results.
A West Australian commentator described his game over there as the best individual game played at Optus Stadium. That's a big call.
That's a big call.
It is a big call. I don't think he might be the best ruckman. I think De Koning's been the best performed ruckman this season. Max had some pretty lean games a month or so back. Should the AFL fine Nick Watson for giving the bird to the crowd? It was on a crowd video. Someone took it on the iPhone, was seen doing it. Or will they make enough out of the Hawthorn-Richmond melee? I don't think they ever look at it as though they've made enough money in fines, the AFL. So,
well, we would hope not, Michael. The bird is an interesting one, isn't it? Everyone who's been giving the bird this year has been fined.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be consistent, yes, I think he should.
Well, I'm opposed to bird fines. I just think it's over the top. I think if someone's inciting trouble, fine them. If there's level of theatre, and the hypocrisy over the Hinkley thing, just gives all of us have highlighted is breathtaking. Where they then turn it into promotion, so they can't send one message and then contradict it with their other messages.
Did you see Jackie Reid from 3AW, and we ran it on Agenda Set, has spotted Archie Perkins, was it, giving the double bird to Stanton, one of the assistant coaches. We couldn't quite prove it, and we asked Brad Scott about it, and he didn't deny it. The double bird to a coach.
Oh, the double bird.
I thought that was pretty impressive. Anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah, the bird is a bit... I agree, Jake.
Jake, Laura Kane was doing some media rounds last week, having been...
Some.
Mute for the year.
She was in The Age and the Herald Sun. She was on SEN.
Yeah. How did you rate it?
I don't like the way this is, and this is not about Laura. This is about the AFL media handling of Laura. This is not Laura herself, who's doing her best and is, in the long run will end up better in that job. It is about how Laura Kane is, about 35?
Yeah.
She's a lawyer. She's a very intelligent person. She's more than capable of handling media in a more ad hoc way where you just, in the old days, not to give out trade secrets, all of us would ring the general manager of footy operations in a very routine way and just deal with them.
Can I say?
But don't you
when you
do
say
that
in the
now?
old days, that's only 3 or 4 years ago.
But Jake, you can ring.
Yep.
Surely you do that with Laura Kane.
No, Laura Kane. No, there's a clear shield that has been more put around her than other people in that job.
I'm not sure about that.
No, more. Well, no. Why are we actually having set piece interviews as opposed to just normal discourse?
Oh well, but you can do both. Andrew Demetrio, when he was running footy, I remember sitting down with him and doing an interview. When you say controlled, what, are there other people in the room?
Yes. Well, Pete Ryan did an interview and one of the media handlers was in the room. Now, I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's highly...
Who was in the room?
Kate Hutchison, who's in the one of the AFL media people.
Yeah, I know Kate.
Now, I did an interview with Kate Hall last year about, she's it's a sensitive topic, and with mental health of players and various players that she's, including Clayton Oliver, that have been in her, I'm not going to say in her care, but kind of, she's certainly helped. I'm sure she's well and truly involved in the Jamara Ugle-Hagan situation. And again, Kate Hutchison, and they're nothing against Kate. It's a AFL policy that I think is very flawed. They expect clubs to have player access. We get access to players. Players just fend for themselves who are 20, 22. They just do it. And they're not trying to mollycoddle executives who are highly qualified people.
It signals to that person that you're interviewing that they don't trust them.
Exactly. Well, your comment, Karen, I'm just telling you what's
happened. I remember when, it was one of the best stories The Age had, that I had with The Age when I went and interviewed Mike Fitzpatrick, and we ended up breaking the story about the
19th, 18th,
17th and 18th teams coming out of GWS and the Gold Coast. And Brian Walsh sat in on that interview. And when I went over to Port Adelaide last year to interview Jason Horne-Francis, Daniel Norton, their media boss, sat in on that interview. I don't think that's unheard of at clubs either.
No, but I don't think a general manager of football or a head of mental health at the AFL need a chaperone. I don't agree with it. I fundamentally don't agree with that. We've got the Prime Minister of the country. They pick up the phone. Albanese picks up the phone to people. We're adults here.
But I'm sure you...
So you don't develop relationships as much if you do it that way.
I'm sure you make calls to people like Andrew Dillon and Laura Kane, and they do take your calls. But
of course, Caro, we all call people individually, but I'm saying I don't think chaperoned interviews are the way to go.
It probably is a bit.
It's a bit interventionist.
All right, fair point. Starting to sound a little bit too media concerned for itself, so we'll move on from there. But I think it's a legitimate point. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks to you both for joining us. Thanks also to Channel 7 and Fox Footy for the audio we've used in this episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via email, realfootypod@theage.com.au. Don't forget to subscribe, rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And the Tipping Podcast will be back on Thursday. Catch you then.